Okay. Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to everyone to our second AHK working group on the fourth industrial revolution session with the title Roles of Technologies. This session is organized by the Southern African German Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as the EU Chamber of Commerce and Industry in South Africa. We are very happy that we have over 60 registrations for this event today. The session is scheduled to run for 1.5 hours, and we should be finished at around 12:30. A warm welcome to our speakers, Professor Fulufelo Nelwamondo. He's the Executive Cluster Manager, Next Gen Enterprises and Institutions at the CSIR, as well as our two keynote speakers, Dr. Daniel Visser, Group Manager, Planning and Knowledge Management, Business Excellence and Integration at the CSIR, and Mr. Mark van Pelt. He's the Managing Director of Pepper & Fuchs, and as you might have learned already with the last session, he's also the chairperson of our working group on the fourth industrial revolution. I would like to quickly go through the house rules before we start. They are as follows. We are doing this online session via the Zoom platform. That's a change to the last time where we did it via Teams. Kindly post your questions in the chat function box that will appear, I think it's on the bottom now, of your screen. Please keep yourself muted at all times because we have an open session. And if you raise the questions, I will address you directly and ask you to unmute yourself if need be. After the first keynote speaker had his presentation, we will go over to a short question and answer and interaction part. And just from the briefing point of view, there are also other experts available from the CSIR to address a question that might be raised. Please be advised that this session is being recorded, and we will make the recording available afterwards in our thank you email, and also, of course, upon a request if you have missed or lost the link. I would like to give a quick recap on the first session held on the 18th of August, in which Tim Abbott, he's our Chamber's president, and he's also a director of the EU Chamber, as well as the CEO of the BMW Group South Africa, spoke about the recommendations and way forward from the Presidential Commission on 4IR. The report was at this session introduced by Professor Marvela, and us representing the German and with our partners, the European business community, we highlighted it that we are available to support the process in South Africa in the fourth industrial revolution. To be able to do that, we want to align the activities of our working group with the content of the report. This is why we conducted a quick survey during the session in our last meeting around the interest of our participants in the working group on 4IR. As a result, 92% of the respondents are interested in participation in the working group. As we suggested certain topics that can be discussed in subgroups, we have asked the participants on the specific topics of interest. Most interest is within the field of Industry 4.0/advanced manufacturing. But in addition to that, skills and human capital for 4IR is another important topic, and that was highlighted by the participating companies. Then digitalization and SMME development, as well as science, technology, and innovation, and that includes AR and robotics, are also on the focus of the companies as well. Lastly, and that's of course very important as well, 4IR infrastructure, including 5G, was mentioned also a couple of times. So this result of our quick survey will be forming the basis of the next steps that will be presented by our chairperson, Mark van Pelt, after our keynote speakers. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to Professor Fulufelo Nelwamondo, who will be giving us his opening remarks on the industry-related topic, followed by our keynote speaker, Dr. Daniel Visser, who will be talking about how CSIR is at the forefront of the fourth industrial revolution in South Africa. Welcome, Prof. and Dr. Visser, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. And let me welcome the audience. We're very pleased to be giving this talk today. I'm just going to ask Dan to show the presentation.
I just need the host to enable screen sharing for me. Yeah, there's always a technical issue. I just want to check with Corinne. I'm not being allowed to share my screen at the moment.
Angeline, Katrin, are you there?
Dear participants, kindly bear with us. We're just kindly working on fixing that technicality. Mr. Visser, you can try and share your screen now.
Great, thanks. I'm getting to it now. There we go. We should be up.
Yes. Thank you very much. I don't think it's appearing on full mode. It should be fine for me. Yeah, I think this is fine.
Okay, is it up then? Yes.
I'm seeing a blank screen.
Should be up. It's up. Sorry.
Mr. Visser, we are on your screen right now. I think you just need to perhaps move to the next slide, but this is your screen currently displaying.
Okay, is it displaying the presentation?
It is currently just a blank screen at the moment.
Very odd.
Perhaps you could open it again.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you. I guess this is the new normal that we will all get used to for as long as we have this online presence. I'll be very brief, colleagues. I just want to give a short introduction to the CSIR for those who don't know the CSIR. And Dr. Visser will then take us through the remainder of the presentation. We as a CSIR, of course, we are working very closely. I'm glad I learned that you invited the Deputy Chairperson of the Presidential Commission for IR, with whom we work very closely as well. As a CSIR, if I just start with the mandate of the CSIR, if we just go to the next slide, the slide with the mandate.
Should be up.
Okay. Apologies. Then I think what you're sharing it not in full mode. So we are seeing your actual desktop screen as opposed to seeing the presentation.
Yeah, I found that odd. Just 1 second. I think it's because it's split between 2 screens. So sorry about that.
Okay.
You can talk to the mandate, it'll come up in a second.
Okay. So the CSIR, for those who may not know what the CSIR is, we were established as an Act of Parliament in 1945, which has been revised several times in 1988 and 1990. But basically what it gives us as our role is similar to what a number of RTOs in various places will have, where we are directed or we are required to do directed and particularly multidisciplinary research and technological innovation, not just for our own, but to foster in the national interest what will lead to scientific development and industrial development. It's very important to emphasize the aspect of the scientific development and the industrial development, because those two angles are the ones that then govern what we do. We don't just do the research for the sake of research. It must find its way in industry. And when we do these are things that we don't do on our own, but we can do it on our own, but we do it largely in cooperation with principals from the private sector and the public sector, thereby contributing to the improvement of quality of life of the people of the Republic. So the whole idea is whatever we do must then lead to the improvement of the quality of life. That being said, over the last year, we sat down and we thought we need to look very thoroughly around ourselves and revise what we've been doing as a CSIR and say, now in the era of fourth industrial revolution, is that still relevant? How do we make sure that we continue to grow? How do we make sure that what we do brings sustainability? And most importantly, impact. And those 4 things that I've mentioned, growth, sustainability, impact, and relevance, are the 4 pillars of the strategy that we are busy unfolding at the moment, where we are saying, in line with the mandate, we want to drive the development and the localization of technological solutions to improve the quality of life. If I just unpack that a little bit further, so just looking into the mandate, we then found it fit to define our mission along the same lines that say we are the accelerators of socio-economic prosperity in South Africa through leading innovation. And that's exactly what we do. Our mission as a CSIR is to collaboratively innovate and localize technologies while providing knowledge solutions for the inclusive and sustainable advancement of industry and society, which is exactly unpacked from our mandate, and that's what our focus is. So when we were going through this process, you can move to the next slide then. When we were going through this process, we had to then find the key areas of what we want to achieve. And this is what we had called technology sector clusters, which are positioned to drive that industrialization. So the key aspect is to then work with industry. You look into this, I'm not going to go into all the details, but you look into a number of these 9 pillars or 9 clusters. If I just start from the top left, where you have advanced agriculture and food, and you look at the layer on top, you'll see a running theme that talks to agriculture and food, which is focusing on innovating to strengthen the primary production and agro-processing. And I think the key aspect here is, you'll agree that South Africa has a vast amount of land compared to a number of even European countries. But we still see a number of countries that produce much more than us because they are probably way ahead technologically. And the idea is, how do we then align our agriculture and food processing and growth to move to the new levels? Once we've done that, we then look into aspects of chemical processing, where we want to establish the state-of-the-art biochemistry, chemistry to drive local pharmaceuticals and the chemicals industry from the agriculture. And all this can actually end in the health sector, where in that particular space, you can then start having improved health outcomes and patient-centric healthcare delivery. So if you look at the top layer, the three clusters at the top, they talk largely to the science. When you look into the next layer, which is the light blue, you see the future of production in manufacturing. You see the future of production in mining. You see defense and security. And here again, the key aspect is for us to strengthen the manufacturing value chain from the manufacturing angle, to support the mining and to revitalize our dying mining industry, which has fallen back over the last few years. And again, the defense and security, where we're saying, how do we then make sure that as the CSIR, we can then assist in the building resilient defense and security capabilities to strengthen our national security, and not just for ourselves, but also for Africa. And here you see a theme of engineering heaviness within this pillar. Then you have the clusters that fall within the top, what you see on the screen as the bottom three, which is the smart places, the smart mobility, and the next generation's enterprises and institutions. What you'll see here, again, you see the element smart coming a lot, because this is where we see as the clusters that can support all the other clusters in a manner that you could use the smart places kind of technologies in the farms. You can use what you have within the smart mobility, where we are looking into, for instance, a fast moving of these goods. How do you measure that what you have from agriculture can lead fast into a hospital that is sitting somewhere waiting for these medicines very quickly? How do you measure that the mobility of the goods is done efficiently? And on the right-hand side, you see the next-gen enterprise and institutions, where the key aspect here is to support the digitalization of the government and the public institutions and the private sector. One example here is to say, if you think of a bank, the way we used to bank in the past and how we're going to be banking in the future is completely different. So how do we then support the digitalization or the creation of this new bank of the future? And all these clusters that you see on this picture are technology industry convergences that represent the CSR strategic focus. So as a CSR, when we talk of what we do, it can be summarized largely within these areas, because this is exactly what our mission is. If you just go to the next slide, which I believe will be my last slide before I hand over to Dan. So if you look into the technologies that then underpin some of these areas, some of the technologies that almost everyone is talking about, some of them are seen as hypes: Internet of Things, Internet of Many Things, and so on, issues of link sensors, biotechnology, human enhancement technologies. We're all wearing devices now. When we go to our exercising fields, we're all more comfortable in being around robots, advanced robotics coming in, AI being a critical aspect of our world now, aspects of 3D printing and additive manufacturing, aspects of advanced materials and nanomaterials, satellite enablement, blockchains, and other distributed ledger technologies. I'm not going to go through a whole list, but this kind of list that you see gives you a sense of the transformative 4IR technologies that as a CSIR we are leading and we are driving, not only for ourselves, as I said in the beginning, but for advancement of society in the country and for Africa. And we do this in partnership with a number of companies and government departments. So I will leave it here and ask Dan to then proceed with the remainder of the presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Fulafella. Appreciate that introduction, because it also leads into what I wanted to say. And first of all, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the CSR and what we're doing in this space of 4IR with the Council and with the EU Council as well. So it's, we've been talking about technology a lot, and some of us are struggling with technology. I've been doing talks on 4IR for probably close on 2 years now. I don't think I've had a single one where there wasn't a technical issue. It's the absolute norm. When you talk about 4IR, you should actually expect a technical issue. But we talk about the technologies, and Prof mentioned a few of the technologies that we're looking at as CSR to underpin our work. And I'm going to go through a few more of those now. But what I'm not going to do today is discuss, the technologies themselves and the technical aspects of those technologies, because CSR is very much focused on solutions and applications. And we really look at it from the point of view is how can we use these technologies to make a difference in the lives of the people of South Africa and further into Africa. So a lot of the examples you will see are not necessarily technical around artificial intelligence or blockchain or anything like that, but rather how is it implied in a real world situation. And a number of these are from the last couple of years. Most of the examples that I've shared with you today are actually out of our annual report. You'll have a little bit of insight into that. That will be released early on in the next month, and I'll be sure to share a digital copy with the two chambers. So from CSR's point of view, we're really looking at advancing industry and revitalizing the South African industry, but also using these technologies to help the government with service delivery and capability development. And I've got a number of examples that I want to go through, and I'm really just going to touch on each of them briefly rather than go into detail, and then we can chat about those that resonate with you in the discussion afterwards. The one thing, as I said, is we want to enable. And here we've got an example of where we're enabling the fourth industrial revolution through expanding broadband access. So this is basically a policy framework and then a protocol and then various tools that we've developed as CSR to expand high frequency broadband, expand access to it, and basically utilize TV white spaces, which are currently underutilized. And this is an area that can be broadly applicable across South Africa because of the current infrastructure that we have. So what we're trying to do here is expand people's access to broadband, access areas that are not well utilized within our broadband spectrum, and do it on the back of infrastructure that is readily available or can be easily adapted. So this is technology that the actual policy and protocol around it is something that we've shared through Europe, particularly into Britain. And more recently, we've opened up broadband in South Africa and developed various protocols and help people with accessing that TV white space so that they could then broadcast material across that TV white space. So that's just one of the ways that we are looking at expanding access. Another way that we're looking at enabling government, this here is a picture of the Cybersecurity Center in the city of Johannesburg. And we've done a number of these command and control centers. You'll see other examples for rhino poaching. One that I haven't brought up today is the recent one that we developed for COVID-19 data tracking and integration. But basically here we put together a cybersecurity command center which enables the city of Joburg to integrate a number of different technologies and service providers and be able to test their cybersecurity readiness or deal with attacks when they do come, and they will come in this new era. Another way we're enabling this is around photovoltaics, looking at renewable energies. So we've developed a platform that allows potential vendors or suppliers coming into South Africa or South African companies to test photovoltaic systems in the South African context. We actually used ourselves as a test bed here initially, and we picked up a problem with a supplier that was coming in from overseas prior to them completing their installation. So they were able to address that fault in their own photovoltaic systems and then go through the complete installation, and we now offer that service to a number of other companies. So just driving the area of renewables. We talk about the Internet of Things, and CSR has been working on the Internet of Things for many years before I think it even became a term. This example here is the National OSIM's Information Management System. A large proportion of our population lives on the coastline of South Africa, and it is a strong economic driver in various aspects. So we have developed a number of tools and then integrated those tools under what is OSIMS, the Ocean Information Management System. So anything from satellite imaging, satellite tracking of vessels, to ground-based sensors and cameras that are looking at erosion of areas or looking at temperature, looking at wind. All of these things are integrated to allow better decision-making and better planning by government for our coastal systems. On the back of that, we've also then gone on to develop various robotics. We work with a partner in the US on wave gliders, which are autonomous robotics that spend a couple of months at a time out in the oceans. They deep dive up to a number of kilometers down and then back up, and they send data. So we do temperature monitoring at various depths in the ocean. We do carbon dioxide monitoring. We look at effects of climate change. We look at currents. So these are very helpful for fisheries. They're helpful for planning around climate change. And we've developed a number of sensors and applications and new power modes for these robotic gliders to be able to do their jobs out in the oceans, as I say, for weeks and weeks on end. Another system around data analytics and decision report. This is a system that's developed for the Gauteng Roads Department. So this is looking at all of the roads and transport systems around the Gauteng network. And this is a base system that allows for the integration of a number of different sensors. So you're looking at the monitoring the condition of highways, condition of bridges. You're also looking at traffic flow in various areas. And again, when you set that up in a command control situation, you allow for better decision-making from municipality. We've gone further to make this application available on iPads and on smartphones so that you can have near real-time view of what is happening on the Gauteng road systems. And of course, you can imagine as you start putting in more sensors and connecting them up to whatever cloud it is that we'll be utilizing, you can get much better granular information about the condition of roads and the basic state of our transport system. And obviously in Gauteng, that's a huge economic driver to maintain. Everybody knows 3D printing as a key part of the fourth industrial revolution. Since 2011, the CSIR has been developing advanced 3D printing applications. We have one of the biggest metal 3D printers in the world. I think somebody has overtaken us recently. But basically developed to produce aerospace parts. So we can produce up to 2 meters long in a modular fashion, 600 millimeters wide and 600 millimeters high, with a fair amount of novel tech that's gone in to allow high speed printing using a 5 kilowatt laser. So this has been under development for some time, and we have started printing parts and testing parts. A number of parts have been validated now and included in an airplane that has been built by one of our collaborators. But 3D printing is not only about printing parts. These are printed in titanium. We also print in various other metals. On the research side, we also develop a number of different welding technologies so that we can advance additive manufacturing in general. And here we have an example of laser refurbishment, where we are refurbishing blades in ESCOM on one of the turbines, and this is without actually removing the blades. So we can remove the blades and do it in-house, or we have a system where we can do it while the blades are still on the rotors. So that is saving a lot of money for ESCOM, saves a lot of downtime in terms of taking those blades down, moving off to a service provider, bringing back, etc. We're also working with a number of different companies, Man Engineering, and there was one other which I forget right now. Another area which is sometimes forgotten around fourth industrial revolution is advanced materials and other advanced manufacturing technologies. Biotechnology is something that's been around forever. For those of you that do know me, this is my area of expertise, or at least was. They don't let me back in the lab anymore. I'm apparently dangerous these days. But CSIR has been working in this space for some time. The picture that we have in front of us here is depicting antibodies that we are producing through tobacco plants effectively. These are antibodies that were identified through the Caprisa trial against HIV. So it is a protection against HIV infection as part of the vaccine trials that are going on in South Africa to deal with, obviously, one of the biggest health problems in our country. There are a variety of other things at CSR. We have the Biomanufacturing Industry Development Center, which assists small and medium enterprises with biotechnology process development at pilot scale, and also natural product process development. We must never forget that we must not just follow on as South Africa. We need to adapt and see what works for South Africa. And in that aspect, we do a lot of natural product processing, and we start including advanced processing for really traditional ways of producing natural products, getting them into market and making them more market ready. We're also looking at advanced pharmaceutical production, and we've got a number of lead products that we're looking at in that space, using flow chemistry and sort of modularized production methodologies. So we're just adding on and bringing in these various technologies. We've had discussions recently to start bringing in advanced modeling and simulation for our technology development around biotechnology. Talking about advanced simulation and modeling, I don't know if there's anybody from Siemens on the call. I would imagine there is. We obviously have a relationship with Siemens and are using their PLM, product lifecycle management technology. It's technology that we've made available to a number of SMMEs and assist them in digital twinning, and then also product lifecycle management, so that they can decrease their cost to market, their development cost to market, and obviously look at product lifecycle management throughout the life cycle of whatever product they're looking at. So this center was developed a couple of years ago, and we're expanding it. We're starting to do 4IR readiness tests with a variety of companies from this platform. We also do other work in simulation. So this is an aircraft simulation. There are a variety of different modes that we've developed here. So assisting in training on a variety of South African aircraft for the South African Defence Force, but also for civil aviation. And then from a sensor point of view, I've pulled up one or two examples of sensor technologies, but this is obviously one of the biggest growing fields at the moment. We've got a long history in the development of SmartCam and various visualization technologies, from visualization of corona on, not COVID-19 corona, electrical corona on electrical lines, looking at repair of electrical lines, to thermal imaging, through to various surveillance cameras. This is one of the latest offerings around SmartCam with easily interchangeable modules, and developed for the South African setting. So very robust, very simple, that it can easily be maintained, easily installed, and remains robust in the South African environment. And that's something that we want to start putting into place more and more, as part of sensor networks to create smart cities and to create safe cities. We've also developed a number of other sensor technologies. So this is a multi-static radar that was developed together with a Swiss company, looking at drone detection. So it very accurately picks up drones in around 1,000 hectare space. So you have 3 of these antennas that are positioned a few kilometers apart, and very accurately pick up drone activity within that space. They've even gone down to pick up bird activity in that particular space. So very sensitive, also low cost, and somewhat mobile in that sense. I did want to depict here, and it's very difficult to depict which is the best. On your left-hand side, you have an installation in Switzerland, which looks beautiful with the mountains. On the right-hand side is an installation in South Africa. And I must admit, I struggled to figure out which one I'd want to be at. Probably both. With this lockdown, I must admit, I'm desperate to get back into the bush. So I'm going to have to go for into the South African bush fairly soon. and they're again talking about that. We've also developed a number of long-range sensors to protect environmental assets, basically. We started with rhinos to prevent poaching, and we've been very successful, particularly in the Kruger Park and a number of private national parks, at detecting poachers and detecting illegal activity in our parks. So we have long-range visual sensors, we have long-range audio sensors, things that are looking at audio triangulation or fire, gunfire triangulation. And all of these are integrated again into a command center that allows very quick and real-time response to a potential threat to poaching. Early last year was the first time in a number of years where the birth of rhinos outpaced the death of rhinos. And we saw that as a great success for the work that we're doing in protecting what for South Africa is a very important asset and is the basis for a lot of tourism and a lot of economic activity. I'm going to go through the next a few relatively quickly because I do want to get onto the World Economic Forum Center, and I see I have we've started working on is, and a number of you will be aware of this, is learning factories or 4-hour centers. A big area is skills development. So we want to develop a number of factories, and we're working with Mercita and a number of the TVET colleges across South Africa at how do we create platforms that allow training of the next generation of workforce. And we'll be utilizing the CSR as the first set of basically mini factories where we will be implementing a number of different technologies from IoT to micro manufacturing to advanced robotics, integrating these. So you can, on one aspect, start testing and integrating new technologies. And on the other aspect, then start training people on those technologies. And we welcome collaboration in this space to implement new technologies, and they have the ability then to train people on new technologies and train a future workforce. We're also very active in the mining space, and you can imagine here the use of augmented reality and virtual reality as training tools, because a number of the environments that our emergency staff and that our mining staff are exposed to are high pressure scenarios that are very difficult to replicate in the real world. So we are developing a number of tools in the augmented reality world that simulates what could potentially and hopefully will never happen, but at least trains people in that scenario and gets them ready. So you go from classroom and ultimately onto the coalface. You want to have been trained already without being exposed to that dangerous environment. So we're doing a lot of work in that space. And then just a couple of other areas of engagement that we could think about. I've spoken about digital manufacturing. I've spoken about learning factories. One of the other areas that I've had conversations with Platform Industry 4 and a number of my German counterparts is the area of standardization, particularly around manufacturing. And how is it that we can integrate with the RAMI framework and make sure that we have standardization, not just within South Africa, but between South Africa and industrial partners throughout the world. With that, I just want to touch on the South African Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. This is part of the Global Network for Technology Governance, which is established by the World Economic Forum. South Africa is in the process of establishing a South African affiliate center. Why are we having a look at this? And I proposed this model a number of years ago, or 2 years ago, where anything that we propose in the space of 4IR has to be considered within a broader environment. And no one person can do anything. So there needs to be an environment that covers the policy and regulation space, the enabling environment around infrastructure, technologies, the development, science and technology environment. Where are we getting these technologies from? Are we developing sovereign technologies? Are we importing technologies? And then for South Africa, it's very important to also look at inclusive development. And all of that in the context of working with private sector, public sector, our African counterparts, as well as our global counterparts. And all of this is starting to come together now. So we are aware of the Presidential Commission that has had a look at this landscape and seen where a number of different opportunities lie and what needs to be addressed. Coming out of that commission, we then see the strategic implementation committee that's going to be developed, and that really will start looking at what is this coordinating council at the center of this ecosystem. What I want to talk about, a very important enabler, is policy and regulation, and that's where the WEF Center comes in. So the WEF Center is really a space for global cooperation, but more holistic cooperation between public sector, private sector, and civil society on the issue of policy and the governance of these new technologies as they are coming on. The Center is a champion for ethics and values, pushing it in that, making sure that each of our implementations at a national level have that strong ethical grounding and takes into account the needs of South Africans and the South African people. So the Center allows co-designing of policy. It's a network that connects, as I say, private sector, public sector, as well as expertise from around the world that are part of the global network. South Africa is now very visible as a player in this space globally, and we need to now expand that footprint or bring that network together in South Africa. And it really is the way that we are going to be immersing South Africa in this 4IR field and start adopting new technology, but adopting it in a responsible manner. Sorry, if I just go back a couple there. If we look at the areas that the World Economic Forum looks at, it's around artificial intelligence, data policy as an overarching area, because that's important everywhere. Drones and autonomous mobility, the Internet of Things, smart cities, and then also blockchain and distributed ledger technology. So these are the areas that the forum focuses on at a global level, and various partners focus on different things. I'm over. I'll finish up right now. From a South African perspective, we'll be looking at artificial intelligence, data policy specifically in the health area, blockchain, Internet of Things, and then keeping an eye on a number of the other technologies and their developments from a global perspective. So we look forward to engagements on the World Economic Forum and other areas within CSR that may be of interest. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope I'm back on. Thank you very much, Professor Nel Vamondo and Dr. Visser, for your interesting and insightful contribution and presentation. So thank you a lot. And I must say it's very interesting to get a full overview of the activities of the CSIR, plus obviously the specific activities around the 4IR. There were some questions posted, and I would like to maybe name the persons, and then they can just unmute and ask the question straight away. The first question was posted by a gentleman. I had an interesting talk a couple of weeks ago. His name is Thomas from a company called Rainmaker. I think he's still sitting in Germany, but is normally based in Cape Town and was actually asked to move from Namibia to Cape Town. Thomas, are you on, and would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you very much, Frank, for the introduction. Yeah, my question is, is there any activities in terms of fourth industrial revolution, digital transformation with regards to the hospitality and tourism sector? Because I guess that the tourism sector is one of the biggest employers. 1 out of 10 jobs are in the tourism sector. The most businesses in the hospitality and tourism sector are SMMEs. And they have been hit the hardest from all the industries. And in order for them to recover and to create some resilience and not fall into the old business as usual business model, I believe that the hospitality and tourism sector needs to digitize, needs to go through digital transformation urgently, because that's where the customers actually are and where the industry currently is not?
I'll make a couple of comments to that, Thomas, and then hand over to Fulafelo. Just to say that it hasn't been one of the focus areas under the new CSR strategy, but I cannot agree with you more that it's an important sector to South Africa and has been hit hard. So you'll have seen some of the areas that we work on, from protecting environmental assets, which is obviously important to the tourism sector. We also are having discussions, or have had discussions, with the likes of Airbnb, looking at how Airbnb can assist the South African industry with digital transformation. And a lot of that actually comes down to data policy and sharing of data from Airbnb into public sector to be able to assist. We also work with the Department of Trade and Industry quite closely, who obviously have close ties to tourism. So there are a number of areas, but I agree with you, it's an area we need to look at more. Prof, I'm not sure if you have any more.
Maybe just to add something very briefly. Thank you, Thomas, for that question. We fully agree with you. What we have been observing now has not been maybe a project per se where we are working with the hospitality and tourism sector per se, but a few entities on an individual basis have come to us asking us to do some kind of work. Some, for instance, we were talking to a hotel group not so long ago that wanted us to help them in quantifying their carbon emission from their operations, their cooking and so forth. Some wanted us to work with them on, in fact, it was the same group, to also look into their energy efficiency issues. How do they optimize efficiencies and so on? Nobody has really come to us to say, let us use 4IR to transform the sector per se. But there are pieces of work that we're being asked to do that talk to either digitalization or addressing the energy efficiency or carbon emissions. So I think that's all I can add for now.
No, thank you, Daniel and Fulefo. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there is a lot of stuff that can be done. You were like referring now to sustainability aspects and that kind of stuff. When it comes to sustainability and tourism and hospitality, everybody thinks about social and ecologically or environmental sustainability, but that's only the second and the third step. So the first step that got to be achieved is economical sustainability in the first place, because the economical sustainability for the hospitality and tourism businesses and the destination creates the means, resources, and funds to even think of ecological and social sustainability. So in the current space where, you know, people give away 60 to 80% of their profits to Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, and so forth, that's all money leaking out of the country, not contributing to the destination, SDGs, and anything. I think that's a big part one need to look into to keep more money in the country to, in the first place, achieve that economical sustainability before you can think of anything else.
Agreed. It's one of those, you can only agree with that. Tourism is a very important part of our economy, and we do need to do something about it, particularly after COVID. It's been a huge knock with a number of entities, small businesses in particular, that I just think will never recover, and some big businesses that I think are going to struggle to get back to past economic status.
Thank you very much. And Thomas, thank you very much for this valuable remark as well. Yeah, you're more than welcome to join the activities of our working group, Thomas, to also develop certain ideas around there. So there is, I see on the chat is posted a link to the Survey Monkey, which I kindly ask all participants to maybe fill in the survey. It's really only 2 questions or 3 questions probably, where your interest will lie in the different subgroups. Mark will elaborate that a little bit more later. There is another question posted by Mr. Sommer, Andreas Sommer. Andreas, I think we have met together with Mark also a couple of weeks ago. Would you like to ask your question as well in person?
Yeah, hello, Frank. Hello, Mark. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Andreas Sommer. I'm based in Somerset West in South Africa, in the lovely Cape Town area. And I'm global consultant for telecommunications for more than 30 years and doing a lot of projects around the world, also on behalf of the European Union and the Asian Development Bank. And I'm advisor to many governments around the world and telecom operators. The basis for everything, and you mentioned a lot of these new technologies, you called it technology sector clusters and 4IR technologies. They all require a robust, affordable, international standardized and sustainable technical infrastructure, also for the rural areas when I look at the, for example, the mines, which are very important for South Africa. And of course, aligned policies and regulations, which in my eyes here are still pending. My question is, how are you cooperating with important stakeholders such as ICASA? Allocation of affordable and sufficient spectrum is a key issue here in South Africa. How you are cooperating with the policy makers, the telecom operators, so that they move into the right direction and there will not be further delays. I think there are some extremely high risk South Africa going into, for example, the WAN, which I think has proven to be extremely high risk in many other countries of the world.
I think I can jump into the ICASA part. We are working very well with ICASA now. In fact, I meet with the CEO on a regular basis. So the cooperation with them on the issues of like spectrum sharing, we are working as partners, and that is the work that is going on without any delay at the moment. Of course, there are a lot of political aspects about the allocation of the spectrum and other issues, and we are not in the space where we.
I think you're gone. You're on mute.
Yeah. Also see unmute. Prof.
Yeah.
Yeah, back. No.
Okay, then continue. I think I had a connection issue here.
Okay.
That's what we are talking about.
Maybe Dan can just continue in the meantime.
Sure, no problem. So Prof was covering some of the work that we do with ICASA, and obviously we do a lot of work with the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. We have a close relationship with them. I think coming to the first part of your comment there around policy and particularly how we address this in a South African setting, and that's where the South African Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution comes in. The aspiration and intent there is to be a very inclusive policy development platform. So we bring in the likes of DCTT, the Department of Trade and Industry, all of the relevant players, as well as the people that are supplying different aspects of broadband infrastructure. The other aspiration is that we look at inclusivity and ensure that we are addressing inequalities within South Africa. So if we are addressing broadband infrastructure, we don't only address it in an urban setting, in a strong economic setting, that we address it in a rural or lower economic setting as well at the same time. So if we are going to pilot infrastructure, it's piloted in both settings to ensure whatever policy that we're developing around broadband infrastructure and access to broadband is inclusive of the dichotomy that exists in South Africa at the moment. So that is one of the biggest aspects of the World Economic Forum Center that we are establishing at the moment. I don't know if there's anything else to add, Fulafelo.
Yeah, I think you covered it well. So issue of the connectivity aspect, which is the part where I think when I got my connection failed me, I was just saying that we're working with ICASA on a number of things, including, for instance, the GLSD database, any other aspect that relates to supporting even the rural communities to have a good access, issues of the TV white spaces and so on. So we are trying to look into accessibility across board, and we're working very closely with the CASA on that matter. So I think Dan covered the other part well. So that's all I can add.
Thank you, Prof. Andreas, was that sufficient so far?
Yes, I think as a short comment, of course, we can go deeper into the discussion, but I think it makes no sense here. It's not the right forum for this.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Certainly, at the beginning, we discussed that the colleagues from the CSIR are available for continuing discussion and creating the connection to our members of the working group. Having said that, and looking at the time, I would like to close the Q&A session for now and hand over to Mark van Pelt, who's our chairperson of the working group, to give an overview of the next steps and elaborate which angle we can focus on. So Mark, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Frank. Ladies, if I can share my screen, then I can also start my presentation. In the meantime, also from my side, a very big thank you to Prof. Nelvamondo as well as Dan. Very interesting presentations. Living myself in Pretoria East, I can say some very smart, intelligent, and high technology things are happening around my corner. I'm very, very excited about the fact that you guys are engaging in a multitude of areas with one single drive, the benefit of the South African society. And I think that's what we are all working for. For those people that don't know me, and let me go into presentation mode, and then it should be visible for everybody. My name is Mark van Pelt. I'm a Belgian national, moved to South Africa in 2014. I'm the managing director of Pepperl & Fuchs in Africa. Pepperl & Fuchs is a German-based company. One of our fields of expertise are smart sensors, and I was very excited to hear from Dan that the sensor industry is a strong development sector. I can only agree with that and confirm that. Today I'm here in my role as the chairperson for the German and European Chamber of the working group, which we initially started calling the Working Group on Industry 4.0, based on the further maturing of the topic in this country and the need for a broader discussion and domain of applications. We are in the transition phase of redefining the tasks of our working group as such. And I guess if I look to this picture, that looks very similar to a slide that Dan was also showing. The drive of the working group is to interact with all stakeholders in society, in South African society, to make sure that in a South African context, we as those European companies, and do not forget, there are about 2,000 European companies in South Africa providing direct and indirectly jobs to about 750,000 South Africans. We do that by doing about 75% of foreign direct investment. So that's always a number that I would like to remind people on to indicate how strong the European relationships are with South Africa. And in those 2,000 European companies, about 600 of them, so the vast majority, are of German origin, and hence the reason that we, the German Chamber, in collaboration with the European Chamber, are also following this topic quite closely. what are the goals? Why are we there? We basically are there for advocacy. And by the way, this presentation will also be available after this session. You will receive a link in an email and it will be put on the AHK website as well. The justification in the background of the working group has a few prime roles. We are there to advocate for those 2,000 companies and make sure that the business climate is always optimum in a South African context. We obviously can also be quite critical and raise the impediments that are there to develop further on in the right direction. And if I listen to the debate we just had around 5G, that is surely an impediment where urgently things need to happen because that's one of our backbones for further development in this country and the application of new technologies in particular in the urban as well as in the rural areas. And then, last but not least, we are also there not only to raise impediments, but also to jointly work with the different stakeholders, both from the public as well as the private sector, to discuss potential solutions and the implementation of them. As a working group, we have this as a list of our tasks. Not that I'm going to go through all the details, and once again, the presentation will be available after this session. But at the end of the day, we need to bring the right people around the table, and we started doing that in about 2 years ago in 2018. And I remember meetings where we had 40 to 45 participants, and that also indicates, and I'll come to that later on, how broad the discussion domain of the 4IR is. Now, in that whole domain, we want to start working a bit more on doing research papers, policy briefs and surveys. We want to interact more and more with the stakeholders out there, the CSIR being a very important part of that stakeholdership. We want to consult further on with government, the Presidential Commission on the 4IR, civil societies. If need to be, we can be available in Parliament as well. And I think the bullet point around being also in communication with a lot of stakeholders from a Black business orientation, from a technology orientation, as well as European partners outside or beyond those 2,000 companies that we are representing in South Africa. And then we obviously communicate with the media quite intensively also. And last but not least, we want to make sure also, and that is also the drive of the refurbishment, if I may call it like that, of our working group, is to bring also the other bilateral chambers into the equation as well, to make sure that we are collaborating and giving a platform to those 2,000 European companies. For those that are not yet aware, these are the conclusions or the recommendations of the Presidential Commission on 4IR. They have been presented to President Ramaphosa in the beginning of August. Our guest in the previous session, Prof. Shelitsi Marwala, the Vice Chancellor from UJAS, as well as the Vice Chair of the Presidential Commission, elaborated in detail in the last session on the topics that you see on screen. By the way, that session is, that recording is also available on the website of the German Chamber of the AHK. And he elaborated on the investment in human capital. Obviously, whatever we plan, it's us humans that need to make it happen. And that means also that we need to make sure that we reskill and upskill all participants in society to the level that is needed to cope with the challenges of the new technologies. There is also a need, and that is surely a domain where Prof. Marwala is quite interested in. He's a specialist in that field, to establish an AI institute. A platform for advanced manufacturing and new materials. In the presentation of Dan, you could also see quite strongly that the CSIR is also deploying a lot of activities in that domain. Then your data security and making data available and data visibility and transparency is obviously an important aspect in the development of 4IR in this country. The future industries, platforms and applications of 4IR, the infrastructure, and that starts with a very basic thing, having electricity every day and every hour, but it also goes in the direction of 5G, stable internet, broadband internet, internet available in the rural as well as in the urban areas. But if we then refer again to the topic of spectrum availability, there is also a vast interest from the private sector, from manufacturing companies, to have spectrum, private spectrum available, licenses available in a domain where they can make private use of that spectrum. Think about the car manufacturing industry like BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen here in South Africa. And I'm obviously referring to the German ones in the first case. Then policy and legislation. The world is going digital. It's all about how do we adapt our laws, and some very key discussions are related to IP, intellectual property. Who is owning today intellectual property? Where is the line between supplier and customer? If the customer is getting involved in the manufacturing process already of the customer, and there is this mix of things which obviously leads to a redefinition of policy and legislation. It's all about making sure that Parliament is also involved in that process to align legislation, policy, and going with that standardization of many domains going into the right direction. And our understanding, and that's the last bullet point of this page, is that government has the intention to establish, also referred by Dan in his presentation, to establish this Strategy Implementation and Coordination Council, or the Strategy Council in general. And we, as the working group of the German Chamber / European Chamber, are obviously also very eager to participate and to be actively involved with proposals and activities in that strategy group. The last session, for those that were not there, we kind of did a survey also around the topics that you see on the screen now. They are kind of representing also the topics, the recommendations as proposed in the report from the Presidential Advisory Commission on 4IR. And the survey that we did gave the result that is on screen now. And you see clearly a very broad interest in topics like Industry 4.0 and advanced manufacturing, industrialization and commercialization of the whole topic. Digitalization and SMMEs, as we all know, the cornerstone of many European economies are small and medium-sized companies. I'm also working for one of those medium-sized companies. And that's a field where a lot of development needs to take place and is already taking place in South Africa quite strongly. And how does that go with your digital economy, app development, and any other type of application area you might be active in, or you might want to be active in? Skills and human capital, as I refer to, very key in the whole story. You need to have educated people to make this happen. Science, technology, and innovation, the obvious number 4 that we got out of the survey, and the infrastructure with a kind of focus on the topic of the internet and 5G in particular. Now, based on the wide variety of topics that need to be covered and areas where we need to work in and strive for collaboration with the public and the private sector in South Africa, it has been decided that we leave the part of one single working group. Like Dan also referred in his presentation to, you can't know it all. So we need to have specialized people, and we need to have those specialized people in their field of expertise and having them working on specific topics. So the overall overarching working group structure will change. We will go to a steering committee structure, which is basically going to be a representation of the sub-streams or the sub-working groups that we are looking at. In each sub-working group, there will be a need for a chair and a deputy chair, a position that will be defined for rolling 2 years. And then every chairperson, or in the absence of the chair, the deputy chair of those sub-working groups will de facto be also a member of the steering committee. And in that steering committee, we will also add also representatives from the German and other bilateral and the European chamber, just to make sure that we cover all responsibilities in that structure. And on an as-needed basis, we will obviously invite in the future also guests, fields, people that are expert in their field that can bring added value to the discussion. So that basically means that the structure we are looking at and the redefinition of the working group could look like the following graph. So we are part of the EU/German Chamber group of working groups. We have our steering committee with a chairperson and a vice chairperson. And then you have your sub-working groups with a selection of the 5 most important topics that we have defined out of our survey. And to list them again on screen, we are talking about Industry 4 and advanced manufacturing. So we are seeking specialists we are seeking for specialists in that field. We also want to have a broader discussion on digitalization and the combination with small and medium-sized companies, and listening to the question earlier on about the tourism and hospitality industry. That could surely be a discussion that can be made on that level. Skills development and human capital is obviously a key factor. For those that might not know, within the German Chamber, we already have a working group on the topic of education. And we will obviously also make connection with that working group. Here we talk obviously in the context of the 4IR and the need for skills development and human capital over there, and what can we do to bring added value to that discussion. Is the South African educational system fit for the challenges of tomorrow? Is everybody going to partake in that? If not, what can we do? Where can we assist to make that happen? Another domain which was indicated by our memberships is science, technology, innovation, and application. Many of those 2,000 companies, and surely the 600 German companies, are active in a lot of science and technology driven activities. And by the way, the working group has the objective also to look more to active applications. It is not a talk group. We need to be a doing group more and more. And then last but not least, the backbone of the whole story, your ICT infrastructure, cybersecurity, 5G, and whatever goes with that is another domain in which we have an interest to set up a sub-working group. So with this slide, I want to send out a message to everybody, and we will repeat this request also via some direct mailing, where we want to have participants from both the EU company side, the private and the public sector in South Africa, from wherever you are. It doesn't matter. If you feel that you are an expert in one of these fields, we highly welcome you in our future activities. As soon as we have identified participants of the working groups, we will set up startup meetings in which objectives and tasks will be identified. We are giving some general titles here, but obviously every subgroup still need to identify and define for future activities in which domains they want to be active, and what topics specifically they want to address on. So in that whole context, the input from organizations like, for instance, the CSIR is also highly welcome. And I guess if the government is setting up a platform where we can have joint discussions and define joint actions, then that's the most ideal situation we can go for. Therefore, to know where your field of expertise is and where your interest lies, we have foreseen this survey with SurveyMonkey. So please go to the survey and select your field of interest, your field of expertise, and potentially whether you are also interested to become chair or vice chairperson of a sub-working group, so that at least we can also have people leading those individual groups that are obviously also expert again in the fields of that sub-working group, and they will also be the representative in the steering committee that will then define further interaction with the public and the private sector, as well as the definition of further strategy goals and objectives. So if you go to this hyperlink, that will bring you to the survey. So the question is the two questions are very simple. Which sub-working group do you want to actively participate in? And are you interested to be a chair or vice chairperson of such a working group? I would say everybody is welcome, as long as you bring added value to the discussion, and that obviously based on your field of expertise. We are there, the German Chamber, in collaboration with the European Chamber, will set up the framework so that we can plan future activities and define common grounds. That's it from my side. If you have any further questions, input, requirements, this is a starting point, but this is not an ending point. And I guess a lot of things are happening in South Africa. Yes, COVID-19 is still with us and is affecting multiple domains. Yes, the South African economy is battling, but we can mourn about that, or we can join forces together and make sure that we develop this country in the interest of its people in the right direction, and then we can all benefit from that. I thank you for that, and if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to reply to them.
Mark, thank you so much for this overview, and thank you so much for outlining the next steps. I just want to give the chance indeed to the participants if they have questions straight away. Then just maybe just speak or send a message into the chat. I must say I have been accustomed so much to Teams now where you just raise your hand and then you can see who wants to indicate. Need to get also used to a bit about on that platform. But if there is no questions, as Mark said, we will certainly follow up with the survey. I've seen the list of participants on the right-hand side, and I can also see that some other regular followers are missing. So we will distribute that as well to those members and partners that couldn't be with us today. Then let me take the chance to thank very much to our guest speakers from the CSIR, to Prof and Doctor that you have given that overview. I must say, I hope that we can have a follow-up at some point also on the activities with the platform around the World Economic Forum on Africa. I actually would like to know a little bit more how that works in collaboration, particularly on also an international level and into the regional level. As you might be aware, we also have offices in Sub-Saharan Africa, and we see that topic also rolling out obviously into the region. So yeah, then thank you again for everyone to make this possible, particularly to my colleagues, Angeline and Katrin, and we will follow up and let's see when we have the next session. We planned in a 3 to 4 weeks rhythm, maybe depending on how everything goes now here in South Africa. Maybe we can even meet in person at some point. I must say I would like to welcome that as well. So thanks to everyone. Have a great week further, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful interaction in future. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks, bye.